Let me first try to explain this in as simple words as I can possibly find to phrase this. If we look, for example, at the situation in let's say, Uruguay or Brazil, Chile, they are right now vaccinating on a background of pretty high infectious pressure. So when Chile started to vaccinate, they were basically vaccinating while an infectious wave was just coming up. And there is one thing that I've explained several different times, that is, if you have an infection, the first wave, a number of people, actually the majority of the population, will be asymptomatically infected, right? And those people do not develop, most of those people do not develop a full-fledged immune response, a full-fledged B-cell response, full-fledged antibodies. When I mean full-fledged, it's long-lived and is memory. And I know people have been scrutinizing this, etc. But I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for a report showing that there is B-cell memory elicited or built in people who got asymptomatically infected. So that means that the antibodies that those people are developing, and there is a number of several different reports that say that even after 8 weeks, these antibodies are no longer detectable. And they are short-lived, and for me it's not a real priming, because there is no B-cell memory, at least has not been reported. So in other words, these antibodies are suboptimal, but they do bind to the spike protein, and this has been my argument all along. As they bind to the spike protein with higher affinity than the natural antibodies, the IgMs, can do, they are capable of outcompeting or at least suppressing natural immunity. So if now, during this very period in time where your natural antibodies are suppressed, you get reinfected with the virus, that can have bad consequences, because your innate immunity is suppressed and your suboptimal antibodies will not be sufficiently functional to protect you. Frankly speaking, for me, there is 3 things that have been missing in this discussion of the pandemic. All the role of asymptomatically infected people, who I think are really a reservoir for breeding variants. And I can come to this and speak to this more in detail. The second thing has been the ignorance about immune escape, in a sense that I think the situation is promoting the propagation of immune escape variants. So we know that these immune escape variants, you have them all the time, they emerge all the time. It's not about this, it's about how is it possible that through suboptimal immune conditions, conditions of suboptimal pressure, you select those variants and you promote their propagation, for example, in the population, then this is a problem. And the third thing that has been missing completely is the role and the contribution of innate immunity. So now, frankly speaking, I think if you don't understand these 3 contributions, it is impossible to understand what is going on in this pandemic. And frankly speaking, that is what we're seeing right now. Health authorities do no longer understand what is going on. Nobody dares to make any prognosis. Nobody dares, to say, for example, how is this going to end? And the mass vaccination, the end game of the mass vaccination was herd immunity. Is somebody standing up, some health authority, and saying, well, guys, we will have herd immunity, for example, in 2 years from now. We will have all the infectious variants under control. This whole pandemic will be reduced and degraded to a kind of seasonal disease, a kind of common cold, and this will not cost many more lives. And it will end within the next 2 years. I think that would be a reasonable statement to make if you go for mass vaccination. Nobody is doing this, because simply the pandemic is, and where it is going, is no longer understood, for fundamental lack of understanding of a number of important factors that are determining and shaping the course of this pandemic. Well, I don't know exactly, Philip. First of all, let's be very open and serious about this. This is very, very complex, very, very complex. And I mean, the pandemic and, right now, the impact of mass vaccination, of global infection prevention measures, etc. So does that mean that I'm more intelligent than anybody else? Certainly not. But I must say I have taken a deep dive into this because I was from the very beginning very suspicious, and I felt that something was not wrong. It was not right. Sorry. And then, of course, some experts will take a deep dive and spend day and night on this and not leave any stone unturned till they have found it. And others will probably stick to the mantra of vaccination and saying, well, the more we vaccinate, the lower the infectious pressure, the less cases, the fewer cases of disease, and the less the likelihood that variants will appear. But I do think, and I am under the impression from some very few comments that I've gotten from key experts, that somebody really realized that I know what I'm talking about, that it may be an issue, that I do have a point, and I must say, I've been calling several different times on the WHO and on experts to have this discussion on these topics, like what is the contribution of innate immunity, what is the likelihood that immune escape variants could propagate and start to dominate, what is the role of the asymptomatically infected people in this, and there is simply no response, no feedback whatsoever. But so what I would like to do is simply to say, look, guys, because my purpose, the purpose was to have this call and this discussion in advance. So in order to be able to still intervene and to avoid bad things, since there is no response to this, I mean, I think I've done my homework. I put as much as I could on my website. Unfortunately, we have now come to the point where we have to wait and see. And what I'm saying is, look, these are my predictions based on the way I understand this and on the way it makes, scientifically speaking, for me sense. These are my predictions. Where are yours?